Yeah, tell me. Let's start from the beginning. Let's start with about you guys, and just give a bit about yourselves and your background for people that don't know you.
I guess I'll start there. Well, my name is Shane. They call me TheRuiner. I wrote this blog, and a lot of people in this community found it. It was about my experiences growing up within the Illuminati structure, within secret societies and things like that, and all the experiences that I had within it. And the blog got a lot of attention. People ended up interviewing me, and now Rachel is doing the same thing. I think that sums it up.
Yeah, and there's been quite a few experiences, hasn't there? Various kinds throughout your life.
Definitely.
Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing you talk at the show on the 13th of May. And you're going to be talking about magic, aren't you, Shane?
Yes, magic is a very wide word, obviously. Like, I plan on touching on all different aspects of it. Basically, what I'm trying to do is take what I learned through all of those experiences, kind of break it down into a simple form, and bring it back in a way that's can be practically used, as opposed to just a whole bunch of fancy terms and language. Try to break it down so that it's something simple that everyone can kind of grasp, and then hopefully we can start actually using it, and as opposed to having it used against us, which seems to be the case in this society. So,
how do you see it ultimately being used? What do you see as the kind of like ultimate purpose of being able to use our magic?
Well, just controlling our thoughts and even our emotions. Basically, by doing so, they're controlling what we create in terms of the reality, or what this shared reality looks like. Because we're not educated in the symbology and the various types of magic that they're using, it kind of subconsciously affects us, which ends up manifesting into the real world. So hopefully, if we can kind of get back some of that understanding of how the symbology, the words that we use, the spells that we're putting on each other through language, all of these different things work, then we can start manifesting something better. That's my hope, anyways.
Yeah, I think that sounds really good. Can we just unpick that a little bit for people that aren't familiar with some of the things you said, like manifesting and the creating of our reality? Can you just expand on that a little bit for people? What are we creating at the moment, and what is it that these people? Who are these people to begin with, and what is it they're trying to get us to create?
Well, they're trying to just get us to create a society that's in line with their own views of what society should be. Where, in my opinion, their beliefs are very misguided, but they're also very strong. So they have a certain view for where they believe humanity is supposed to go, and so everything that they put in front of us to influence us and affect us is causing us to manifest that as their reality. I've talked about it before, but ultimately where they're going from here is kind of a transhuman world, where we will start coupling with technology through things like biotics or cybernetics, as well as start introducing what we would consider to be like our artificial life forms or artificial intelligence into society in the terms of robots and what would we call them, androids, I suppose. So that's the kind of future that they want to see, where we're kind of separated a little bit more from nature and a lot more dependent on technology. And the reasoning for that is just to control what is a very large population, so that that small percentage of this population that maintains that control can maintain their power over it, which is really just their own ego, their own belief system that they are superior to the rest of us.
Yeah, because from my understanding, people are waking up more and more now, and they're having less control over the masses. Is that right? Is that your understanding?
Well, exactly. There's almost like an offshoot of humanity right now that is kind of waking up to these things and not allowing it to control them so much. And therefore the reality that they've desired is not creating quite as well, because there's a certain percentage of consciousness that is awake to their game and doesn't want to play. So it's causing them to become a little bit desperate, but it's also allowing us to manifest some really beautiful things at times. And I see that continuing and becoming stronger as more of us wake up and as this kind of balancing wave of energy passes through. More and more people are kind of waking up or becoming self-conscious, really. And the more we take on responsibility or self-responsibility, the more we're in control of what we perceive, the more we're in control of what we output. So I do see it happening. It's been happening gradually over several years now, but I think we're at a definite tipping point now where the balance is starting to restore, and that'll give us a little bit more power, so to speak, in terms of manifesting here.
Do you feel that there needs to be a certain percentage of people, like is it the 100th monkey syndrome? Do you feel it's that, or do you think it can?
No, I don't put a number on it. I don't believe that there's a number to put on it. I think it's just a matter of time and the potency of the consciousness rather than the quantity of it.
And when you say they, the people that are controlling, you're talking about a small percentage of people, which you would call the Illuminati.
Yes, it's definitely a small percentage of the overall population, but there's probably more people kind of involved with the structure than typically imagined. At the same time, it's definitely not the majority.
And there's lots of people involved, but they might be compartmentalized into different specialities or professions. So they're not aware of the whole game or agenda going on.
Exactly, and also not aware of the full spectrum of their actions and what they all touch, you know. And some people aren't understanding that little part of the puzzle that they look after is still part of the puzzle, and therefore, and that puzzle isn't a very good one. Most of them don't see the full picture; they only see what's in front of them. It's a series, like the compartmentalization works on a series of lies. I think it was Richard Hoagland who became famous for saying the lie is different at every level, and that's exactly how they work.
Yeah, it becomes very distorted. So
there's someone else here with us. I wonder who she is.
Yes, Natasha. Hi.
Hello.
So Natasha, you're going to be talking before Shane, actually, aren't you, on Sunday the 13th of May? And,
yes, I am.
You're going to be kind of giving a bit of a backdrop, aren't you, to what he's talking about? And
sorry, I didn't quite hear the first part. What was that?
So you're going to give a bit of a backdrop to what Shane's talking about, aren't you?
Yes.
Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to be talking about creation and us and what we do as spirits, because we're creator sparks when we enter into creation, and we have a passage that we have lots of adventures in, and in order to understand our passage, I have to talk, of all the varieties of things that we can do. I mean, this universe is pretty massive. It involves creation, and so I'm going to be talking about the different levels of consciousness, the conscious awareness that we have. We're down here right now in the 3D physical, but we've had a long journey before we came here. And so we've got a history ourselves, and, we're beautiful beings, and we incarnate on planets, and, we do forget ourselves to remember ourselves in these different environments we're exploring. And in that process, we're learning more and more about ourselves in the process of who we are and how we operate, and our nature as it matures as we journey through the universe. And a lot of my information has come from my own soul knowingness, remembering things that I have seen, experienced in other lives, not necessarily on this planet, before that too. And those memories started to come in when I was around 4 years old. I was quite aware at 2 years old of a number of things, but at 4 years old, I had this massive return of a number of memories that were not just about myself, but very much about this reality and what was coming down the pipeline with the agendas and the control systems, and and a lot of the things now that most people are talking about on the internet. So I had this awareness from a very early age, although I still had the mental sort of ideas and concepts as a 4-year-old. I also had this other part of me that was also working and being very much more aware as well. And so my knowledge comes from there, and then a lifetime of naturally doing outer bodies, which I discovered as a child, and that allowed me then to start exploring my memories and backing them up to prove to myself this is exactly, you know, how this works, you know, from my perception. And so, yeah, I suppose one could say I've kind of walked between worlds.
Fascinating. Can you tell me a little bit more about your out-of-body experiences? What kind of things have you seen?
Yes. There are many different things that you can do with outer body. Mostly my outer bodies haven't been very much about going off and visiting people. It's been more soul work, where I've wanted to learn more about myself and my own, and how we passage through those levels of consciousness. One of the things that I became aware of at 4 years old when I had some of these memories restored was about how humanity was being interrupted with a light trap. Lots of people have been talking about that, and that really, really concerned me. So I spent a long time, many decades, looking at the light trap in outer body, experiencing it's like a wall you hit, and then you have this sudden amnesia. I never got to see what other people talk about with the stations and things, but I noticed the amnesia. But there was a way of consciously actually bypassing that. You could miss it, or you could, even when you hit that amnesia, there was a way of still moving forward and move that up then into what most people call the light realm. And so I started exploring that to see then how to get beyond that into the next level. And so it was very much building upon the experience that I was having and learning through that as I worked through the levels to then reach the next level. And I would observe the conscious states I was in each time as I was doing that, and notice the conscious differences as my consciousness kind of expanded as you moved up the levels.
Interesting. And did you encounter any other beings there, or other people like you? Or?
Yes. There were, and there would be. I'd sometimes meet people actually in the light realm, but that were having out of bodies as well, but that I knew in here. So that was quite interesting. I mean, out of bodies is actually very natural to us. It's all part of our journey, and we're busy when we go to sleep at night. It's not like we just go to sleep. Our consciousness goes elsewhere. And it's us here in the physical that's not keeping up with that, you know, until we start catching it, and then our awareness just expands on that. Outer body doesn't have to be difficult, and it's not what people call, I define outer body very differently. I make a big distinction on it, because it's not astral travel, projection, or it's not remote viewing. Outer body is very much close to what happens when people die. And so you are leaving the body. So when I'm out of body, I actually move into my astral body or my light body, or the bodies that are even higher. And when I'm in those bodies, I've always been that body. When I'm experiencing that body, I can't remember the me that's here, that's asleep at that moment. So with astral projection and remote viewing, there's you've normally got a consciousness continuing on, that you know you're lying in bed, or you're sitting cross-legged in meditation when you're doing this. In outer body, you have completely moved out of your body, my physical body here. I've moved out of that and moved into another part of myself that's more of the etheric bodies, which is a different kind of thinking.
What would you say you've learned from your experiences?
Well, the first thing with doing outer bodies is that you realise that we still exist beyond this body here when we die, and that how we get stuck down here with all these emotions and things that bother us and worry us. When we've moved out of that, we move away from that. It's almost like this was the dream, and the state that we are then out of body is more the real. And what happens with outer bodies as well, the more outer bodies we do, as we're collecting more information through our first-hand experiences traveling through those levels, we then bring that back into here, into the physical body. So our awareness expands in here. So, for instance, you might then start becoming more aware of seeing ghosts, or you're seeing orbs, or your intuition becomes more acute, and you know when something's going to happen before it happens. So there's an advancement even in the consciousness of our awareness in the physical then by doing the outer bodies. It's bringing back that information into here, and part of the waking up.
Yeah, it almost sounds like an integration of parts of ourselves.
It's very exciting. It's very exciting. Yeah, because we're learning more about ourselves. And a lot of people, actually children especially, a lot of children naturally do outer bodies, and they don't know what they are, but they just know that. I mean, I know for myself, when I was as a young child, I just knew I existed in other places whilst living here. I didn't actually have a term for it. I just existed elsewhere too. And a lot of children are like that. And a lot of children will have, for instance, when they're just falling to sleep, they'll suddenly find themselves, flying very fast around their house or down the stairs and things. And then suddenly jolt back into their body again and think, what was that? I was 1 minute doing this and thought I was going to crash down the stairs, which one doesn't. But, that's very much the first stages of the level just above the physical when we're moving about. And it's fun flying. Lots of people have experiences flying.
Yeah. I've had out-of-body type experiences of flying. It's fun, and it feels very natural.
It is, yeah. And unfortunately, though, society, most kids aren't growing up in families that encourage that. They'll just say, oh, that you've just got an overactive imagination. You were dreaming.
Yeah, it's kind of conditioned out of us, isn't it, through schooling and.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my children have outer bodies, and they started talking about them from a very young age. So I encouraged it and explained what was happening, and that sometimes the phenomena that occurs just as you're leaving your physical body and moving into your astral body, that there can be a lot of phenomena and noise and strange things that go off. And so that's that was the first thing they started telling me. And then I'd explain then, you don't need to be worried about that. That's okay. It's part of the process. And as soon as you break away enough from your body, all that noise stops.
So what would you say your most profound experience was in doing outer body?
I would say that happened around the age of 33. I love the number 33 because when I was 33, a lot of magic happened that year. And that was when I had an outer body. It was actually on my birthday as well, so that was pretty cool. And I took myself out of body. I did a controlled outer body rather than a spontaneous, which is different again. So I instigated the outer body myself, and I managed to travel up into just before the 5th level of what I define as different kingdoms of consciousness. And I worked through all from the bottom of astral, from the physical body into astral, into the light, and then into what I call the soul level, and moving up. And I traveled through all the different playgrounds in each of those levels, moving all the way up to where I got to, all in one outer body. And I was really chuffed with that, because I had then in one experience the whole mapping of what I had been learning, and techniques and the difference between spontaneous and controlled outer bodies, and at the event on the 13th of May. That's all part of how we can then start exploring more levels of our own selves and how we fit in with creation.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So the event we're talking about is the Multidimensional Show, Birmingham UK. And for anybody listening who wants to find out more, get tickets, you can go to www.multidimensionalshow.co.uk. And Shane and Natasha will be talking on Sunday the 13th from 10:30 until lunchtime, about 1 o'clock. And they will have a group discussion following that in another room in the same building. So people can sort of ask questions and find out more about how to apply some of the things they've heard. So Shane, are you still there?
Absolutely.
Hi. So yeah, I was listening to Natasha and some of her experiences. I understand that you've kind of got shared memories of previous lifetimes as well, and previous kind of realms.
Well, for myself, one of the unique qualities that I've been able to possess is that I don't have the broken. Natasha talked about soul trap technology and just incarnation in general. We typically do a bit of memory clearing, which means, when you choose a new body, you choose the new incarnation, you decide not to take all of your memories with you in order to have the experience you're setting out to have. Soul trap technology is a little bit different because they kind of erase that memory, but for myself, because I didn't quite pass the natural way into here, I didn't have that. So I still have full memory of lifetimes before this. And on occasion, while I'm in here, I bump into soul signatures that I recognize. And usually after some dialogue with whoever's carrying that soul signature, I shouldn't say usually, at times, we end up identifying that we do know each other, and sometimes we can identify where and when. And Natasha is one of my closest friends, and definitely someone I've shared a lot of experience with. So, yes.
Yeah. When you say you didn't come in here the natural way, what do you mean?
Just incarnating in the natural sense. The soul trap technology is a kind of something that stands in the way of that. But if that wasn't there, then you would go through the wheel of incarnation, make the decisions, incarnational decisions, and then you would take the body and move in through that. So the natural way would just be natural incarnation as opposed to a recycling technology like the soul trap technology.
Okay. I've heard different things about how there's a false light that people can get lured to, and that is the false light that recycles them. Is that kind of what you're describing?
Yes, people have different words for it, but false light technology, soul trap, it's the same thing. And what it is they started kind of putting into, because it is kind of a natural part of the passing process between states, is to see, a bright light, right? And so they kind of took that and perverted it and put it out into the consciousness in such a way that, like follow the light, that type of idea, all the while knowing that they had this technology in place that had a bright light, like a very, very bright light that would attract you once you left the body to go in its direction. And once you were in its direction, you would be pulled into that technology. So that's why it's called different things, but it's the same technology either way. It's just a way of recycling souls as opposed to allowing them the time and freedom to go back to the wheel of incarnation, process everything that they've gone through, integrate it properly, and prepare for the next incarnation.
Right. Okay. So really, as Natasha was saying about out-of-body experiences, they're quite important for preparing for that stage, so you're aware.
Absolutely, and another thing she touched on, which will be a big part of my talk, is the fact that when we're children, we're doing this all the time. This is a natural thing for us. It's society that's told us that it's not. I was watching a movie recently. I believe it was the fourth Insidious movie, The Last Key, where the young girl was, psychic and could talk to spirits and interact with ghosts. And her mother was trying to support her in that, and the father was trying to beat it out of her. And that was kind of a good way of describing kind of what's gone on in our world, is like we have the source, and we have, even soul family spirit guides, whatever you want to call them, that are constantly trying to, put synchronicity and put signs and little tells in our path to make us see that, the spiritual realm is a big part of what creates the physical realm. And then we have society trying to beat that idea out of us. So, if we were in a place where right from children we were explained that these things are natural, and they were encouraged and allowed to flourish, then it would be a much different world. We'd all be doing what we're meant to do, which is creating a reality together. But because that's so suppressed and it's so marginalized and it's literally beaten out of us when we're children, it's really hard for the adult today to even open those doors again, find all those keys and unlock all those doors to bring it back. And I find that really sad.
Yeah. It's the main reason why I've taken my daughter out of school, because I think that there's a lot of programming that goes on and narrowing of the kind of perceptual field that we have that goes on in the education system. So, yeah.
Well, within the education system, because everyone you're dealing with is a supposed authority, you take everything as it's told to you, right? So you kind of adopt this belief that everything you're learning in school is absolutely fact and cannot be questioned and is just, common knowledge. But that's not always the case, especially, if you were to compare school systems from my country to your country to the United States, we're dealing with three different entities there. So obviously it's not quite as solidified as, our perception of it seems to think that it is.
So if people are able to kind of use this magic, you're saying that we'll be able to create this wonderful new place, this new world. Is this kind of what Natasha you're referring to, heaven on earth? Would you call it that, Shane? Is it kind of that's the aim here when we come to this planet, incarnate here?
Did you say to make heaven on earth? Is that
what you said? Yeah.
I don't know if that's exactly it. I guess it would depend on what your perception of heaven is. Things should be a lot better than they are. It's the idea of like a utopia, or like the common idea or concept of heaven may not be exactly what this is going to be. I mean, there's lessons to be learned here too, and you don't want to completely erase that. But at the same time, it's not in balance. And if we could get it back in balance, then, there could be a lot more harmony between us and nature and us and each other. And we can create that by rediscovering these things, these tools, these gifts, these, natural courses of process that we have as human beings on this planet, because that's what we're here for. That's what we do here. We are the creators of all of this, and we have to be aware of not only that fact, but then aware of what we're creating with our thoughts and everything else. So heaven on earth may be a little bit extreme, but more or less just where that concept comes from is the fact that when we look around at this world, we know it can be better, and we need to get ourselves there. So
living peacefully and harmoniously together.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you say that we create our reality. For some people that may be a new concept. Can you just explain a bit more? Can you explain the mechanics of that? Is it that we're all in a kind of a shared dream, or a one consciousness? How would you explain that concept?
I don't know. That's Natasha, do you want to field that one?
Natasha?
I'll have a go. Well, we have our own personal reality that we're creating around us. I used to call it like we've got these energy fields around us, and which is also connected to the levels that are, when we're going out of body. I mean, we're walking with everything actually literally around us, all the way from connection to source. And that's will be something that I'll be talking about again at the event. And so when we have our thoughts, especially if we concentrate our thoughts on a focus, we can bring that into our reality, into our personal reality, and manifest that. An example that blew me away in my life was there was a weed, a beautiful flower that I really like, but it's actually a weed, and it's like a big, massive daisy, but it's very big. And I always wanted one of them in my garden. And I kept driving past along a very busy road, a whole bunch of these flowers. And every year I kept thinking, I must try and get some seeds for this plant. And I didn't know what it was called at the time. Anyway, one summer I remembered as I drove past again, and passing thoughts I find I can also be very powerful, because we're not actually got a need on it. You know, it's not a desperation on on that passing thought. And I thought about this plant as I drove past and thought, you know, I really want one of those in my garden. And the next morning I woke up, and there in the middle of my lawn, that was a full-grown plant of this wild plant. And so things like that we can manifest into our reality, but we're also in a collective here as well. So together, all of us together, all our thoughts are being put into a big pool of thoughts to help manifest our reality too. So we have our own individual reality that's personal to us, plus the collective that we're all adding into.
Yeah. It feels it's like almost like a dance, or a kind of like a interplay where things will kind of merge and change.
Mm-hmm. And we know this as well when we go to, like if we go to a party or somewhere like that, and you could have somebody that comes into the room and suddenly the whole atmosphere changes. And so we can be very effective just being in our calm state and in balance, and the whole energy can change around us because somebody feels it, and then they feel, they feel that peace, and they feel that peace within them. Now you've got two people feeling that peace, and then it kind of grows. Or laughter. I mean, look, laughter is really infectious. I mean, that's another way of just changing a whole atmosphere really quickly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was reading about that the other day, a study about people that were in a room and didn't speak or interact with each other for 20 minutes. And I think the brainwave state or some measure was taken beforehand and afterhand. And it was noted that the general kind of state of mind of all the people in the room kind of matched the most calm, most centered person there. Mm-hmm. So that makes a lot of sense, and that, we can all experience that anyway, can't we? We can go somewhere and somebody that's got a really strong presence seems to have that great influence.
And children have that gift too, don't they? I mean, when children run in, when you've got parents and adults all having very serious conversations, maybe even getting rather heated, the children can come in suddenly and start mucking about and doing funny things. And again, the whole thing changes again. Yeah. It just lifts that mood. I mean, that's one of the things that I will be talking about is how to self-maintain ourselves and keep a balance within ourselves. And we're going to be going through what people call the chakra system, but the chakra system is much more than it's all interconnected. I mean, I'm going to be interconnecting so many things in creation, from our journey that we have already taken to come here, and our evolution as we start connecting more into those higher consciousnesses and bring them back here in the physical body, and how all this is all part of this big massive journey of adventures that we're having, and understanding deeper levels of ourselves at the end of the day, and coexisting together and playing with each other. I mean, we're all family. Yeah. At the end of the day, we're all spirit. And I'll also be discussing about the source levels, because lots of people talk about source, and source is kind of just at the top and just outside of creation. Creation is our playgrounds, and it just goes on forever and ever, all the different types of multiverses one can go and experience. But I'm going to be talking about the source levels as well, to who we are, as consciousness before we start coming into creation and start taking on form and embodiments in incarnations.
Natasha, I'm going to have to stop you there because the Zoom session finishes. We have 40 minutes and then we'll have to restart it again. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. That's okay.
Shane, I'll restart it again.
Sounds good.
We can have an interval, can't we? Hi there, we're back again after the break and ready to get back into it. Shane, I just wanted to ask you about your background a bit more. I didn't really ask you much more, for some people may be a bit confused. You said you came from a Illuminati background. Can you explain a little bit more about that and your experiences?
Well, born into it like family wise, and that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be involved, but it was determined. I found out much later the reason why I was kind of picked was because I identified a soul signature that they couldn't identify, and were curious about it and kind of wanted to see if they could use it to their advantage if there was anything to be used. So that's why at 4 years old I was kind of taken to camp and introduced to the system at that point. As things progressed, I bumped between projects and programs. Eventually, things changed, but that's kind of the reasoning why I got involved, was because of a family background, and then being identified as a soul signature they didn't recognize. They have technology to look at that kind of thing, as well as they have, powerful psychics, especially during the point in time. Technology is kind of a newer thing for them, even like I'd say since the 80s, kind of adopted more technology in the way that they track us as souls. They used to use magicians or psychics, or just people who were very well in tuned psychically to identify these things. They would kind of go out and project around and find these lights, like these souls, and come back and tell the Illuminati people where they are and how to find them. Now they have technology; it's a lot easier. Anyways, that was kind of where it started. In terms of the background, I mean, I could go on for forever, but just the summary of being bounced around between projects, and then eventually I was mentored by someone within their system for a few years. Well, I was kind of introduced to more of the magic side of things, like more of being shown their rituals and being given kind of an overview of what they're doing in that way, and then having explained to me why they're having this all done. And then after that, I started to get out. So I think that I don't know how much more into that you want me to go, but you feel free to ask anything you'd like.
Yeah. So you kind of learned a lot about magic through your experience with this person that kind of taught you.
Well, yeah, I knew a lot coming in, because when I talked about the memories not being broken, like even as a child, I was in full possession of all those gifts. There was actually a lot of time when I was a kid that I didn't understand why this wasn't natural. I actually had to have it explained to me why people weren't just, why doesn't everyone talk to these souls? Why doesn't everyone talk to the trees? Why doesn't everyone communicate with the earth? Why doesn't everyone create the reality? So I've always known it was something I continued to bring in with me. So that they were able to use to their advantage as well, because I was able to, they didn't have to teach me a lot. It was more of just explaining to me their own terminology, the way that they use it, the reasons why they use it, and that kind of thing.
So when you say they, you're talking about your family?
Well, the Illuminati in general, or all the magicians and different entities involved with that structure. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was like, I learned from them what they know, but I already knew magic. I already knew creation. I already knew all of that stuff. So I didn't learn all of that stuff from them, but I've learned, and it's kind of why I subtitled the blog that I wrote the way that I did, Inside the Illuminati Mind. It's about understanding their view of what they are doing, because that's what we need to counter, right? There's different terms, like one thing can be called 9 different words. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the fundamental, I'm losing the word here. The concept. The concept is what matters. What they call it was only important insofar as me being able to understand how this society on this particular planet is being run. Understanding magic as it works fundamentally, naturally. You can explain that with all kinds of different terminology. So my trick and my focus for this particular talk has been to try and find a terminology that will work for this audience, this community, and be able to couple that with the terminology I know the Illuminati uses for themselves while they're doing what they're doing, because that's the way that you would directly counter it, right? So I've learned from them, but they didn't teach me anything I didn't already know. What they taught me was how they do things.
Okay. So you came from what you've called in your blog the Draco family, is that right?
Well, this body's family has nothing to do with Draco, really, other than its Illuminati bloodline, which has a little bit more Draco influence than any of the other bloodlines on the planet.
It's fascinating. So what would you say to people now who listening now? What would you say is their would you give as advice to kind of moving forward to kind of counteract things? What kind of sort of tips can you give to people?
Well, I've always said it's not about learning, it's about remembering, and the biggest thing you have to remember is just that, anything that they're doing is feeding off of you, which means you're the power there, right? They don't have the power, they're using you in order to achieve or utilize your power. So remembering that is a fact is enough to remind you that, that power is yours. You don't have to let anyone feed off of you. You don't have to let them use you. You don't have to create their world. You can start using it to create your own. You just kind of need to remember how. You need to reverse all of that, work that they did to beat it out of you and bring it back. And the first, we've touched on children a few times here, and that's a big part of my focus and always has been, is that's where it starts, is you need to return to being a child. You need to get back to being that pure, conscious, loving entity that you were when you were born, and growing, so that you can, once you're back in that frequency, those memories start to come back of, your imaginary friends and those things under your bed that would come out at night, and those trips you would take when you went to sleep. Those memories start to come back, and when they start to come back, you start to be able to, regain ability to do that as an adult. And, from a healing point of view, finding that child is incredibly important, because you have to heal that first moment where that started getting beaten out of you too, as well as any trauma you may have endured. So returning to that childlike state is very important. Finding that inner child is very, very important. And so that's kind of where I start with anybody, is just you need to bring this back to the moment where it started to break, and you need to reconstruct it within your memory in such a way that it never broke. And once you do that, you start remembering how to visualize things. You start remembering how to properly feel and communicate your feelings. And so that's it, is just remember to play, remember to be we have this idea of being immature, but it's not immature to play. It's not immature to be in touch with your inner child. What's immature is not knowing how to act in the world, but that's a whole other conversation. So that's it. Find that kid and bring it out to play. Yeah,
that sounds lovely. And love that concept, or that feeling of purity in the heart, made to love openly and love others openly and express openly. But it's a journey. I think it's a process, isn't it, to get there, to clear the baggage and sort of the conditioning that we've had, as you were saying, from that first time it's kind of beaten out of us. And there's some shadow work, as we've spoken before together. I know there's that as well, isn't there, to deal with. Face the collective shadows and our own personal shadows.
There's a lot of work to be done, but it doesn't have to be daunting. It can be fun. Just remember what the goal is and what the end of the tunnel, so to speak, is, and just view your entire process of getting there as, some of it's going to hurt, but so did falling off of the swing set when you were a kid. Swinging on the swing set was a lot of fun, though, wasn't it? So think of it like that.
Yeah, and people don't have to be alone either. There's plenty of like-minded people out there to kind of share the journey with, and to do the healing with and to do the playing with too.
Exactly. So quite the community. I've watched it grow over many years, and it's continuing to grow. I've noticed even within the last few months, like just seeing interconnections on social media, and then people, coming into contact with different concepts and ideas, and kind of opening their minds to them, and then opening their hearts to each other, and being able to find some compassion and compatibility with other people it's really beautiful to see. And that's the kind of thing that, as that continues, that's where the kind of cumulative effect of that synergy will start to play out in our reality.
That's wonderful. Something I wanted to ask that's kind of come up from other people is the question of whether we are alone on this planet, or is there life on other planets? Going in a completely different direction now. Just want to put that to both of you, Natasha and Shane. Can you just tell me if you've got any insights on that? Do you have experience or contact experiences to share?
I obviously have many. My whole life was involved with that. And the easy answer is no, we're not alone. We've never been alone. No one is ever alone. There is no such thing as alone. There's many different, versions of humanity that have existed on this planet. There's many different versions of life that have existed on this planet. And some of them still hang around. Some of them come and go. And some of them just kind of exist in a frequency that we don't see. So, no. Contact experiences, I could be here all day, so I'll leave that one alone.
Do you have one though that is most profound that you could share?
It's difficult for me. I've literally been interacting with them since I was like 4 years old, and even before that. Yeah, I don't know a significant one. Obviously, I have friends that are not human, and those, I guess, would be significant to me. But it's really, really difficult for me to answer that question. There's been some startling ones. I mean, like when you talk about a giant, like anything that's that large, right? That's physically startling. It has a physical effect on your human vessel to be in front of something like that. Same thing with a Draco reptilian. If you were to be in front of one of those, there's a primal reaction to it, because you're dealing with a physical being that is much more powerful than you are, like something that could grab you and rip your arm off. And in that particular, your human vessel has a fight or flight response to that, and you feel it. I guess it is a fear, but it's a very unsettling feeling. So there's that. I think one of the ones that always stands out to me is anytime I bump into like a possession type situation, whether it's a disincarnated entity possessing, or if it's just like a body swapping type thing. Because anytime I see someone wearing a body that's not theirs, it really kind of unsettles me, because I know what it's like so well. And just that can happen. I guess the human part of me, the part of me that's having this human experience, anytime I see the soul transfer happen, there's always this part of me that just thinks about the fact that there's people just walking around. You could be walking into a bank and someone could pass you, and they've got maybe some awkward movements. You might notice that as being awkward movements. You might just think they're sick, or you might think that they've got a disability or something, but it's also very possible that that's not their body and they don't know how to drive it properly. And stuff like that is interesting to me. But so I guess I kind of gave you a little bit of a story there, but Natasha might have a better example.
Oh, what to do with ETs and things?
Yeah, just she's looking for a contact experience, I suppose.
A contact experience. Well, I mean, I know for myself, when I was growing up, I kept that around about the age of 9. I was very much, I knew that I existed beyond this earth and had experience beyond there with ETs. I had memories and things, and I felt really isolated. I think I have broken memories, and I felt very isolated. And I spent the summer that year on a swing in the public park, trying to swing as high as I could to that point where you get to that zero gravity kind of thing on the swing. And I was just hoping that was going to somehow beam me up to escape this crazy world that everything was just so back to front. I called it topsy-turvy at the time. And I spent, instead of going to bed at night like I should have done, I decided and it took about 3 weeks, staring out at the window and just calling up into the stars. And I wanted to, because I knew that ETs existed, but everyone's telling me they didn't exist in here. And I knew they did. And I knew that I had many friends that were ETs. And so for 3 weeks, every night, I just stared at the stars and put up the call. And around the 3-week mark, a craft appeared and did this beautiful light dance in the sky for me. And it was zigzagging across the sky at crazy, crazy speeds and could just halt in an instant. And in the end, this craft went out on my side because it got so low, and it went over my view was blocked by trees and a hedge, and on the opposite side was a load of fields. And I ran out to my mother immediately. I've seen this craft in the sky. And she said, "You silly girl, go back to bed. You were dreaming." Obviously I wasn't, because I had not gone to bed yet, but I didn't want to tell her that. But it turned out many, many years later, in my adult years, my mother actually confessed to me that I wasn't the only one that saw that craft that night. And it had actually landed in the fields just past the trees to where I had seen it. I've had other experiences since then. I think what happens as well, that when you see craft, and I'm talking about real craft rather than at home craft, because I was very much calling out for more enlightened beings. It does something in our senses, where I know now when I see a craft, whether it's from home or if it's somewhere else, it's got a different signature to it. There's I don't know if you want to expand on that, Shane, but it does change you. It opens up an awareness that you become more acute to.
Yeah, Shane, do you want to expand on that, or?
Well, it is, it works that way with anything. I call it a cipher. It's kind of like once something's in your mind, like the attractor, where your energy goes, or where attention goes, energy flows, right? So once you kind of have experience in one way, most of the time you'll tend to have other experiences kind of follow it that are in similar ways. And the more experiences you accumulate in that way, the more you start to tune into the frequencies that this is all happening on, the more you start to be able to kind of tell it apart by kind of seeing. It's kind of like in the Matrix, where he's talking about like the numbers coming down the screen, the binary code. He's like, I don't even see that anymore. It's just blonde, redhead, brunette. It's the same type of thing. You're no longer seeing the craft as a physical object. You're seeing it as an energetic object, as an energetic frequency, and therefore you can kind of start telling them apart a little bit more in that way. And it's the same thing with entities. It's the same thing with ETs. You start to kind of, you can kind of feel a person before they enter the room. That type of connection.
I think one of my craziest kind of UFO experiences, type of contact, was on a flight home and landing in Heathrow. And we had to wait a while because it's crazy in Heathrow. You've got to cross the runway to park the plane. I never quite worked that out. So sometimes you had to wait, and we were waiting on the runway for about 10 minutes. And in front of me was this massive UFO craft, but it was one that hadn't fully formed. It was a like in its light form, and it was just hovering just above where they do traffic control. And it was almost like my mind was linked with this craft. There was an empathic kind of communication going off. And the wildest thing was no one else in the craft that I could see in the plane was actually seeing what I was seeing, that was just hovering right in front of us. And then one moment it was stayed there for about 5-10 minutes. And then just before the plane was ready to pull off and go and park, it just went poof, and it was gone. But there was this great peace that I felt. There wasn't like a dialogue language, but it was just like a connection. It was like an empathic connection with the beings on the craft, and just saying, we're here. We're around, we're watching. That was very interesting. And I was just amazed, though, that everybody else was busy with their suitcases or watching still what was on the screen, and just totally oblivious by this UFO that was just right in front of us.
That's the thing with a lot of craft, is because their technology for cloaking themselves is it's the same way magic works. You're just shifting it's just a dimensional shift, right? You're shifting out of a level of, or a spectrum of perception. So they can be right in front of you, and you don't even necessarily notice it at the time because you're not in tune with that particular, I don't know if dimension's the right word, frequency.
Yeah, it's interesting you drew the link there to magic. So kind of the mechanics of magic is similar in that you're kind of tuning into different frequency. And,
absolutely. Magicians have a whole other world that you're not aware of. They actually, as they do disclosing things in movies, they finally did with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, where they, it's a prequel, I guess, to the Harry Potter series, but it kind of shows you, it actually talks about the history of suppressing magic as well, and why there came a point in time where it was not as easily picked up by people, and therefore the people who could pick it up easy were considered dangerous, right? You start, another more recent example of that would be witch burnings. But if you watch that movie, it'll kind of show you that dynamic of how the magic world works as a layer on top of the natural world that everyone else agrees on. You change your perception a little bit, and the energy is processed in your mind differently than it is most of the time, and that can allow you to see things that other people aren't seeing. It can allow you to be in a space with other people and have them not see you. So there's a lot of different ways in which you can use that. And technology, I've said this all along, and a lot of people don't like it, but technology is like the poor man's version of magic, in my opinion. I think that, everything that they develop technology-wise is just a mimic of what we have as a natural ability anyways. So when it comes to cloaking technologies, it's the same thing a magician does when they want to hide in the room with you. Sasquatch do this all the time. Different types of ETs do this all the time, where they're just kind of existing within a frequency of light or a spectrum of light that you're not seeing because you're not tuned into. And, therefore they could be standing right in front of you and you're not seeing them. We've seen this through hypnosis, how you can hypnotize a person and have them not see the elephant in the room, as an example. That type of thing. It's just about, your mind is what's making things real to it. And so if you switch what your mind is perceiving, then you'll see things that you weren't before. You
can see this with babies too. I watched it with my own children, and especially when they were very young and didn't know how to talk yet, and they would suddenly look up towards the ceiling, and I'd watch them burst out into laughter, and that they were having conversations with something that was in the room that was absolutely hilarious to them, and watching it around as it moved around and things. Children are very open to all of that, that no one has told them yet that that doesn't exist.
Sounds like a lot of fun, actually. The possibilities are endless. So I think we should wrap up very shortly, and just wanted to finish with one thing about going back to the ET thing, and we've spoken before about this, but just for people listening again, the incarnated souls here, they're from, we're all from different galaxies or planets or worlds, aren't we? It's a whole mixture of people living on this planet, is what I'm trying to say.
I'll give an easy answer to that, which is yes. And then Natasha might want to expand on that. But yeah, like it's a complicated question because it's a complicated situation. But just to simplify it, yes, there's souls here from just about everywhere. There's souls here that came in from other universes. There's souls here from other galaxies. There's souls here from everything you can think of, and there is a reason for that, which we don't need to get into right now. But it's also true, and this is where Natasha might want to kind of take over, that you know, even like a soul that we would say is from here has been somewhere else too. So it's not, you know, there's this kind of rigid belief that you're trapped within a particular planet or something like that, like for, you know, your whole existence. But that's just not true. You go all over the place. People tend to identify themselves as being from a place or whatever because that was their earliest incarnation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only place they've ever been either.
And I think as well, you know, what we've got right now that's happening here, for, you know, because we're at a pivotal time. There is something very exciting going on in here, and for myself, I get really excited in the fact that there are so many different types of beings that maybe on the outside we've not ever engaged with such people before because they're just in a different part of the universe and their way of life is just very different to maybe what I'm used to, or maybe there are people in here that normally we'd meet on the opposite side of a battlefield, and because we're all walking at this moment, all wearing the same body form, we've got the most amazing opportunities here to really get to know people that maybe we wouldn't normally mingle with, you know, and it gives us an opportunity to really mature as well. Because a lot of people in here, you know, people that talk about indigos and crystal children and things, you know, a lot of those people may be not human normally. They may be something completely different or a different type of human. I mean, it's just an amazing opportunity for so many of us to get to know different ways of being, because we all still carry on a part of our nature in here, you know, to do with where, you know, the body type that we would normally wear. And so there'll be certain traits and things that are, you know, more attached to who we normally are on the outside, you know, and this is the group of souls that, you know, we are part of, you know, to do in the different types of species. But it's a great opportunity now in here to meet lots of different types of souls from different places. I think it's exciting times, and the more conscious we become, and just spend more time when we engage with people, looking into their eyes, you know, because these body forms, we're just wearing them today, you know, they're temporary. We're all family at the end of the day when we go into the spirit levels. We only have this kind of divide, you know, when we see our different bodies and different opinions, and that in these polarized levels, you know, we're all part of family on the higher levels. And it'd be nice for us to really start consciously thinking about that more, and stop having silly arguments over silly things about, you know, skin color, or, you know, someone doesn't have ears or something, you know, in their race, or they just look completely different to a human. It doesn't matter. It's about the consciousness that's driving that body. That's who we're engaging with. We're not engaging with the bodies.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We would definitely need to connect more and, you know, find peace with each other and work collectively. And it is definitely an exciting time with different soul seeds, star seeds, and different races and origins, all united here with what feels like, you know, a connected purpose between us. Yeah. So I'm going to wrap it up there. We've covered quite a lot of ground. So if people are interested in coming along to the show where Shane and Natasha will be talking amongst the other guests that are speaking on Saturday, Steve Noble, Maria Wheatley, and a few other people on the show, just go to the website to find out more at www.multidimensionalshow.co.uk. And ticket starts at £15. So, Shane, you've got a Patreon site as well. I don't know if you've got the link to hand now, or if you want to just share that later when the video gets uploaded.
Yeah, well, I'll throw it in the description or something. I think it's TheRuiner777.
Okay. /
like patreon.com/Ruiner777.
Okay.
But I'm not even 100% sure, so.
Right, okay, well, we'll put that in later. Okay, so thank you, Shane and Natasha, and look forward to speaking to you soon and seeing you on the day.
Thank you very much, Hazel. Sorry, keep calling you Hazel. Thank you very much, Rachel, and I look forward to meeting all the guest speakers and also the people that come along as well. It'd be nice to create a really nice collective, like minds gathering, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.